Greetings, innovators and leaders. This is AI for the C-Suite, your compass for navigating the exponential age. I'm Chad Harvey, and we're here to bring you cutting-edge insights on AI tailored specifically for middle-market organizations. Buckle up as we embark on a journey through the transformative world of artificial intelligence. My guest today is Cameron Duncan, co-founder and CEO of Hallian Technologies, an AI integration platform, AIP, that provides medium-sized businesses the ability to securely build out GenAI solutions within their organizations. With a background in strategic planning, data management, and corporate communications, Cameron has dedicated his career to transforming businesses by turning data into valuable assets. At Hallian, he leads the charge in helping companies leverage generative AI to break down data silos and unlock their team's creativity. Cameron's passion for AI and business transformation has made him a leader in fields like manufacturing, legal compliance, and beyond. Cameron, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Oh, that was a very kind intro. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm happy to have you here, and I want to just jump right in. So, to kick things off, could you just tell us a bit about your journey into the world of AI and how you navigated a transition from a traditional manufacturing and ops role to founding an AI company? I'm particularly interested in insights from your operational background and how it shaped the way you approached building Hallian AI, especially with respect to data silos and process inefficiencies, all that good stuff. So let's dive right in.
Yeah, well, when we founded the company, I don't think we had an intention that it was going to be a quote AI company. So the company was founded in 2021. I joined early this year in January. And when we joined, we were primarily a services company. We did custom business applications. We did data warehousing, business intelligence. That was our bread and butter. And we knew when I joined, the purpose of me joining was to start developing developing a concept to what application do we want to build to go to market with. That was the idea. And my business partner had a strong interest in AI, and at the time I had a passing interest in it. Like I knew that it was a powerful productivity tool, but I hadn't thought about it at an enterprise level. And so over time, we developed the concept of building out what we're now calling Hallian AI. And the intent of the platform that we built is we're calling it an AIP, or an AI integration platform. The idea is that it's a one-stop shop for an organization to use put all of their stuff together for generative AI purposes, chat-based workflow automation, instead of it having be in a bunch of different SaaS tools. You can centralize it into one place. So it's one place for admins, it's one place for users. You can actually drive like the real enterprise level generative AI that everybody's so interested in. That's what we built.
Okay. What's the biggest stumbling block that you've encountered? I know we discussed some case studies, and we'll unpack some of that a little later in the conversation, but what's the biggest stumbling block that you found when you're working with companies? Because you are talking about knitting together a variety of disparate systems and information silos into one to leverage that powerful data.
Yeah, there's a few challenges that we run into. The first challenge is on the sales side, is that when we start talking to organizations, most organizations don't actually have a full concept of like what would a system like this be for, like how would it work inside of our organization. So that's often the first hurdle that we get through, which is like a training aspect. So it's, well, let's just start with the basics. Like, what is generative AI?
Right.
Like, are we all on the same page of exactly what we're talking about here? Like, what are the capabilities? What are the drawbacks of it? And then after that, it's okay, well, what are like the high level concepts that, not that I need them to understand in the weeds of what something like retrieval augmented generation is, or they don't need to understand like necessarily how it works, but they need to understand roughly the concept of what we're trying to do. And then once they understand the concepts of what we're trying to do, then the power of putting all of that in one place in like a real enterprise level app, it starts to make a lot more sense to an executive.
I'm glad that you're using enterprise level apps as the touchstone, because I think That's where a lot of and let's back up a second too.
Yeah.
You unpacked a lot of very important concepts there in the last 45 seconds. Everything from the fact that we still don't have common language around what we're talking about, to some of these other issues in terms of where is the value coming from and how do we make this real to the C-suite decision makers in terms of where they're going to go. So I think I'd like to just dig in a little bit more. When you speak with an executive or leadership team about generative AI, are they chasing a shiny object, or do they actually have an understanding of what this technology is right now? Because I'm finding that there are just widely varying ranges of sophistication here.
I completely agree. Most people that I talk to, I see extremes.
Yeah.
So it's usually when I start conversations, my first question is like, have you used ChatGPT? Like that's usually where I start. Like, tell me like how you understand this technology. Like
Yeah.
when I say things like finely tuned model,
Right.
like, do you know what I mean by that?
Right.
And that helps me gauge the level of like how much research have they done on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So some clients, not all of them, I would say like 10% of the like clients that I talk to, when I first start talking to them, they kind of they understand what I'm talking to. Like, and typically, if they do understand, I'm talking to some type of IT professional, and
Mm-hmm.
they've tried to do some of this stuff already themselves in their organization. So then it's a quicker to the point of like, okay, I can understand, I can tell you exactly what we built. I don't have to do all the preamble of training. I don't really have to teach you about it. We can just jump right into the value. But on the other side, it's much more. If I'm talking to like a C-suite executive, usually I'm tailoring a pitch, right? So if I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to a supply chain VP, or if I'm talking to a chief operating officer, I speak to those people differently. If I'm talking to a CIO, I talk to them differently. If I talk to a chief marketing officer, there's different case studies, the different use cases that you use for individuals like that. But I will usually bring it back to the vision of what we're trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
which is create a one-stop shop and supercharge their efficiency and effectiveness as an organization using the power of ChatGPT grounded in their data.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we start the conversation with. And then once they understand the scope and level of what we're talking about, then we can move to, okay, we can't boil the ocean. We start with individual use cases. We're not going to tackle everything. Like next month, you are not going to be an AI driven organization. But what we can do is let's pick a function, let's pick a particular use case, and we can execute that relatively quickly, 1 to 3 months, depending on how complex it is. And then you just bowling pin it, right? Just like one at a time, over and over
Mm-hmm.
and over, until eventually, miraculously, you're an AI driven organization.
Mm-hmm. I love your initial question of the executives at a very base level. Have you simply used ChatGPT? Have you used Claude? Have you used Perplexity? I think the follow-up question I'm very interested in is when you ask them that, how often are they using it, and is their experience recent? Because as you know, with the different models and the different setups that are coming out with these companies, almost on a weekly basis, the capabilities are changing very quickly, very
Yeah.
rapidly.
Yeah, what I find is like the higher up in an organization you go, this is all right. I'm generalizing. This is a giant generalization, but the higher I've noticed, the higher I go up in the organization, the less likely they are very, very familiar with the features and functionalities of the tool.
Yeah.
If you go down into the organization, if you're working with like an engineer, or if you're working with a commodity manager in a supply chain org, or if you're working with a business development person, those people are very interested in their own personal productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So they gravitate to tools that can really help them with that. So I'll get answers ranging from like, yeah, I'm taking transcripts of calls and then I'm throwing it into ChatGPT and it's helping me summarize my notes and follow up actions. And it saves me like 2 hours a day. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a fantastic use case. So, but if they don't know anything about it, or if they're like, yeah, I'm interested in it, I hear that it's something that we should be looking into, my CIO is really interested in it, or like our head of IT is really interested in it, or I went to a conference that said I should probably be thinking about it, or I don't want to get left behind. I've literally pulled up Chat GPT in meetings. Like, all right, we're gonna scrap the pitch, right? We're just gonna pull up the tool and I'm just gonna ask it crazy questions. Like the other day, I pulled up Chat GPT and just to display what it could do, I said, could you list for me all of the Russian czars from the 1500s and give me a 2 sentence synopsis of what they did in power? And it did it in 5 seconds. And they were like, oh my gosh, it can do that? Like, yeah, that's what we're talking about here. And it can do that in every functional domain. It's a complete revolution of what is possible. And so once you work with that and you get them to understand it, then you can transition to the concept of, well, what would it be like if this tool knew everything about your enterprise? Like, what would that do to your organization's efficiency and effectiveness?
Yep. I love that you're able to make that transition, because I think that's where a lot of folks seem to stop, is they stop at the gee whiz wow factor of, well, look at the answers that we're getting and look at what we can create with this off the shelf tool. To continue along your example of the Russian czars, it'd be like if you asked it that question and then you dropped in a subsequent document that said, oh, and by the way, we have genealogical research that's not in your database that shows that there's a completely different offshoot of the Romanov family. How did you think that impacted, the precursors for World War I or something ridiculous like that? That's the kind of power that we're talking about there. So I love that you're starting with that and kind of bringing them along, because that's where the value is with these organizations. It's coupling the pre-trained aspect of these models with their own data.
Yeah. Again, I would say it's when I was talking to a mentor of mine the other day, and he asked me, he was like, what are you struggling with? I was like, I feel like I spend all of my time just teaching. Like, I'm just trying to get people to understand what we're talking about. And so getting them to that point, then I can finally say, like, all right, now you can understand what the application is that we built. Like, what would it be like? What's the power there?
Right. Yeah. So you alluded to the efficiencies, and I've got an unfair advantage here because you had sent me that case study that you conducted with the engineering firm that you were working with.
Yeah. Okay,
right?
Great.
Yep. And so one of the questions I had is, if I'm recalling correctly, it was something like a 20 to 30% increase in engineer productivity there.
That's what we expect. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So could you maybe give us some specific examples of how you're anticipating that's going to transform daily workflows and reduce burden on senior engineers? What's that look like from a value productivity increase perspective?
Yeah, maybe I can give a high-level overview of what that project is. So I'll start with just what the company is. So the company is an engineering firm. They're medium-sized, right? They have about 200 to 300 people or so. In that engineering firm, they have very specific engineering disciplines, and those specific engineering disciplines, it's geotechnical engineering. So this is a civil engineering firm. Geotechnical engineering, waste engineering, so like solid waste, like landfills, and then they have an environmental group. They do other things, but those are the three primary core, like, technical functions of that group. And they have, over the past 25 to 30 years, have compiled literally thousands and thousands of technical publications. So this is articles that they've gotten off the internet. It's research papers. It's things that they got from conferences. It's things that they've developed internally. It's just an enormous wealth of knowledge. It's literally like college textbooks that they have that they reference. And this is like their superpower, right? Because they have all this knowledge. And what they came to me for was, we have all of this stuff. It's 15,000 documents. It seems like we should be able to do like something with AI with that. Can you help us do that? That was how we started it. And the goal was, their engineers spend an enormous amount of time just searching for the answers to things. Not necessarily their senior engineers. I would say it's more like their younger engineers. You with me so far? We good?
Yep.
Okay, great. So those younger engineers, they're like fresh out of college, or like they're working on their professional engineering license, whatever. Those guys, though they're very smart and understand the engineering concepts from their college, or they wouldn't have gotten a degree, the practical application of those things is a little bit more challenging. It's a jump, right? To go from, I did things in a textbook and we did some field studies, to, oh, now I'm working with an actual client and I'm dealing with some type of failure that I've never dealt before.
Mm.
And so the idea was these senior engineers, like these chief engineer types, they often will just know things off the top of their head, right? Because they've been there, done that. They're like, oh yeah, I know on project X we did this, so I'm just going to go like refresh myself on what exactly we did on that, and then now I have an answer, and they can do it pretty quickly. Those guys are highly sought after because they know so much about the technical side of things, and they understand the firm and what the firm has gone through. The goal, so the younger engineers don't have that knowledge. So what they're often doing is they search for a long time, they fail to find something, or they find something like, I don't know if it's exactly right. And then what do? They go to the chief engineer, right? And then they distract that chief engineer from working on whatever that chief engineer is working on. The hope and the plan here, and we're about 3 weeks from having this fully in production for this firm. We're in the testing phase of it right now. They are going to be able to very quickly search and find things just like ChatGPT, but it's grounded in all of those technical documents that we uploaded into our platform, Hallian AI. So the time savings is going to be from them just being able to immediately retrieve the information in their technical library instead of combing through 15,000 documents to try to find the answer that they want.
Does the question of institutional and historical knowledge that's locked up inside somebody's brain come up in the conversations that you're having with firms like that? Because it's one thing to take 15,000 technical documents, right? It's another to be able to leverage the experience of somebody and translate that into a system. So I'll give you an example where I'm coming from. One of the things that I've been working with a company on is how we document their client interactions as well as their interactions between senior software engineers and junior software engineers in a recorded, transcribed manner so that we can create, let's call it the Cameron bot, right, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value in viewing what's locked up inside somebody's head in addition to the documents that they're drawing upon in their day-to-day job. So does this concept come up yet in some of the conversations that you're having with folks about how do we get that historical institutional knowledge more memorialized and free it from the meat sack silo, if you will?
I would say it hasn't come up with any of our clients yet. I kind of view that as a level 2 operation. Like level 1 is we have a bunch of documents. Let's just make AI work on those documents. In a layman's terms, that's how a lot of our clients think about it. The level 2 would be, okay, now there's a bunch of stuff in this guy's head. How do we get it out? And usually it would be through some type of conversation. But we're also using those senior level engineers to help ensure that part of the, let me back up. I mentioned that we are in the testing phase of this project. And what that means is the tool works, right? You ask it a question, it will give you a response. It will cite its sources. It tells you exactly where it got its information from. But I'm not a professional engineer in geotechnical engineering, right? So I can't look at that and be like, yep, that's definitely how I would have answered that question. But I'm working with the professional engineers inside of that organization that we're asking questions, and then they're looking at the response, they're looking at the sources that were cited, and they're saying like, yes, that is a good response, or no, that's not a good response, and here's why it's not a good response. And then we're going through and finding out why it responded the way that it responded. Is it citing something that was that's an outdated technical specification from like 1997? That was something that we dealt with the other day. It was like, oh, you have 2 versions of this, and it pulled the old one. All right, well, let's remove that old one from the corpus, and then we'll try it again. And lo and behold, it responded how we would expect. So that's what the testing looks like. But we haven't gotten into a place where, all right, let's try to download. So the terminology that I use, there's a guy that I worked with when I worked at General Electric. I worked in General Electric's power division, which we made gas turbines. There was this principal engineer on our team, and the principal engineer's name was Brad. And Brad was the smartest person in the room always. He wrote all the design practices. He was brilliant. He was like an encyclopedia of everything that you could possibly want to know about a gas-fired power plant, right? So everybody went to Brad for everything. And the idea that I have used to explain this concept to people is my goal is to take Brad and put Brad in like everybody's pocket. That's what I want. Like, what if I could get all the knowledge that's in Brad's head and get that into everyone so you could like have a chat bot of Brad. And of course, it's not Brad. Brad's an actual human being with thoughts and feelings and emotions, and it's not going to respond exactly him. But if all Brad was so powerful because again, he wrote all the design practices. Mm-hmm. But if I could take all these design practices, all 150 of them or whatever it was, and put that into a tool that you can then talk to, that's incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful.
It absolutely is. And it begs the question, too, because we started this out and you gave a very good explanation there and a very well thought out answer. We started from the premise of how do we check the work, right? How do we know that this is valid? And I wonder what the impact of some of what we're starting to see with what, and again, we're kind of inventing vernacular and language concepts on the fly as we go with a lot of this technology, but what some of these purveyors of the tech are calling reasoner systems, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder what the application of, say, a reasoner filter or a reasoner layer does in a situation like you just outlined there.
And when you mean, I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Yeah. You're talking about the concept of like getting a response and then looping that back through the LLM to say like, can you check this? I know a lot of developers do something like that where you get code out and then you like basically, and if it's a simple way, you copy and paste that code and say like, show me all the errors in this code or how would you improve this code? And then it kind of iterates through. My understanding is, I know that I'm getting kind of like in the weeds on the industry right now, but the new large language model that came out from ChatGPT, OpenAI, the Strawberry model 01. The most people think, because OpenAI hasn't said how it works, most people think is that it's doing some type of auto loop through that to get you more accurate, reasoned answers. So if the question is like, do I think that's incredibly powerful? Yes, I do think it's incredibly powerful. Do I think that Strawberry is very expensive? Yes, I think Strawberry is very expensive. And so most of the initial use cases that we're rolling out for clients, they don't need that. But some of the more advanced concepts, potentially, we're starting to experiment with it right now to see if it's worth the bang for the buck. Because again, getting a little bit in the weeds on the industry, ChatGPT 4 Omni is super powerful. But OpenAI came out with 4 Omni Mini, which is 60% of the cost of 4 Omni. And from our perspective of testing, and this is not like a scientific test because there are scientists doing all types of studies and running all analysis. Again, we're practical engineer business people, but we've done our own test. We use it internally. I can't tell a difference between 4 Omni Mini and 4 Omni. So we just use 4 Omni Mini. We use that internally. We're recommending that to our clients because it's cheap and it's very, very effective. So do I think that at some point in the future, we will need to use those like logic looping models? Like, yeah, probably. But for early use cases, you don't need anything like that.
Yeah, I would imagine as well, and let's drill in on this a little bit. I would imagine as well that you mentioned and alluded to cost of running, say, the Strawberry model. That has got to really put a crimp in what you're able to do with on-prem type of services. And I know that that's where you're focused. And
that's right.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more about what led you to using on-prem versus cloud-based. And also, there's quite frankly, and I don't want to get too far down in the weeds for our non-technical listeners, but there's a very real split in the IT security community about is on-prem more secure or is cloud-based more secure, especially if you're using and leveraging a system from a company like Microsoft that's got hundreds, if not thousands, of cybersecurity employees in a war room that would rival what the Pentagon's got, right? So, talk to us a little bit about what led you to conclude that on-prem was the way to go here, and what you're finding with that.
Yeah. So once you get people to understand what the potential here for their business is, they typically have a few objections. The first objection is, hey, we don't have anybody in-house that knows how to work on this. And
Mm-hmm.
then the second thing that they bring up immediately is, I don't want, like, I'm worried about my data, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got IP, I've got customer data that I don't want to potentially give away. And then like that's impacting uh, my firm in the eyes of our clients, of like their customers. They don't want potentially to have that get out into the world because their customers are trusting them. They're worried about intellectual property. They're worried about trade secrets. They're worried about, like, I don't want people to know our internal P&Ls, like all of that stuff, right? And so our perspective is, so I mentioned on-prem, and by on-prem, I've actually like moved away from that language because it's super confusing. Talking about like technical jargon, on-prem means a lot of different things for a lot of
Yeah.
different people. What we really mean, what we are doing as an organization, is we're doing privately hosted AI capabilities. Our enterprise level app, and it is an enterprise level app. Um, it can be like a physical server in like a
Mm-hmm.
server room. We actually just did an install like that 3 weeks ago. Or it can be cloud based. It could be on Azure. It could be on AWS.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, it's within their cyber security infrastructure. It's on their infrastructure, whether or not that server's in the cloud, whether or not it's like a physical server in an actual closet. That doesn't really matter to us.
Mm-hmm.
It matters to clients because there are cost differences, and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that it's behind our client's firewall,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to give their data to a third party.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So, kind of a combination of on-prem as well as on tenancy, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. So privately hosted is more of the language that I'm gravitating towards now,
Okay.
because it's a little bit more understandable. Because they're like, oh, do you mean physical? I'm like, actually, that doesn't really matter. I just mean like in your firewalls. That's what I mean.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Um, let's go back and talk a little bit more about data silos. And
Yeah.
one of the things that's very interesting to me about what we're starting to see develop right now is I feel like we have the potential to recreate some of the worst failures of the SaaS era with the proliferation of data silos and with
You're speaking to my
leveraging.
heart on this one, by the way. This is, yeah. Okay, keep going. Keep
No,
going.
no, I'm glad. Well, then let me just short circuit to the question here. What lessons do you think C-suite leaders can learn from the SaaS era to help them avoid similar pitfalls as we move into the generative AI and the agentic AI era?
Yes. Okay, great. So I didn't really talk about much of my background, Chad.
Yeah.
Before I started this company, I was the chief of staff for a company called Proterra. It was a battery electric manufacturing company. We were public. The company went bankrupt. It's part of the reason I decided to start my own firm. But um, as the chief of staff, my number one frustration was how many apps we had. So SaaS apps are amazing in so many ways. Like,
Yep.
we have much better applications now because of the software as a service model that was enabled by cloud computing than we ever did like back in the like the 2000s. But there's challenges with that, and the challenge is information noise and data silos.
Mm-hmm.
You As the chief of staff, I was often asked to run a report. Go, like, Cameron, go figure something out. And it would take me so long to figure out what the truth was, because we had 4 different places that data lived for, like, for supply chain, for example. If I wanted to run inventory numbers, I could go into the ERP system, but I knew that we didn't put all the things in the ERP system. Like, it was also in this other tool that we use to manage our logistics. But then we had another Excel sheet that was like a shadow IT thing that was actually the truth that people actually knew, because that was run on a daily basis. And so I had to triangulate through all of these things and then create a report. And then I still didn't really trust it. So then I'd have to go to like the materials manager and be like, hey, this is the report that I ran. Does, like, can you like double check these numbers for me? Did they seem correct? And then I would show a pretty chart to an executive and they'd be like, Great job, Cameron. They had no idea that it took me 6 hours to do that.
Right.
And all of this, from my perspective, is driven by SaaS, like the proliferation of SaaS applications. Most organizations have between 50 and 100 individual apps. You have like a bunch of project management tools. You have a tool for everything.
Yep.
And I see the exact same thing happening because of the business models that are being pushed by VC companies and a bunch of other industry forces. But it's very attractive to just create an AI app, and then that does supply chain, right? We're going to help you be a more effective commodity manager with the supply chain tool, or our AI tool is a marketing specific tool. And when we were ideating on what we wanted to build, I was like, I don't want to build that. Whatever we do, I don't want to add to that problem, because it's this unseen, often unspoken frustration that I see for like every organization. They all feel this pain, is that it's just so much noise. It's either I don't know what the truth is, or I'm being blasted with information from all over the place, and I don't even know what's real or what to pay attention to. And so our goal was to build a place where you could centralize all of that information. So you could pull in information from your CRM, from your ERP, from your files, from your PowerPoints, from your project management software, and then have it all actually live in one place. That's the vision here, and that's what we built, because I just really see the noise issue not being fixed unless you're able to centralize this type of power in one application.
One of the things I love about this podcast is the ability to connect with people that are smarter than me. They're doing cooler stuff than I'm doing.
I don't know if I wouldn't say I'm smarter than you.
Well,
no.
You just gave me some.
Maybe.
You just gave me some insight and some language around a concept I've been struggling with that I hadn't clicked in on before. And what was absolutely brilliant about your answer is we are starting to see a proliferation of companies out there that are building very specific use cases around AI tools. And what that is, it's a replication of what we went through in the SaaS era. And I think that's what a lot of leaders are looking for, because that's what they've been conditioned to look for over the last 25 years. And so what just locked in for me is we're going to have a period where an awful lot of capital and labor is wasted building very specific tools, 95% of which are probably going to be irrelevant based on what we're talking about here, which is a general purpose tool, because this, again, AI is a general purpose technology that is those specific tools, with some rare exceptions, are going to mostly be obsolete before they even hit the market. And I think, again, it's because we have been conditioned. The enterprise level buyers, the leaders have been conditioned that this is the way the SaaS world works. So we're trying to recreate the SaaS model in AI land, and it ain't going to work.
We're in a very different place.
Yeah.
Like the potential of what is possible with this technology. Like, you don't need a specific supply chain app.
Right.
You can have an index or multiple indexes for your supply chain team that can do everything that off-the-shelf tool can do.
Yeah.
You can have it in the same place that all of your engineering chats are, that all of your legal chats are, that it doesn't have to be. We're just in a very different new place that we just need to transition our mindset to what is currently possible with the technology that exists today. And it's remarkably different than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Before we hopped on our chat today, I had a conversation with the head of a large international-based organization. They're a nonprofit. They do a lot of good work. And we were talking about the CRM and the ERP implementation that they're just going through right now. And, well, if we get this data in order, we can work over here. And I think that there's still an awful lot of organizations that are playing catch-up. They're just now getting to the finish line with their CRM, even though these tools have been around for decades. And I wonder what the appetite is going to be for generative AI tools. And if the appetite doesn't exist in an organization like the one I just referenced, What does that mean for their long-term viability given the pace of change that is being driven by these tools?
I mean,
I
I
don't know.
just
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Go.
So I'm putting together, not to pitch my own stuff. That's not really the point here, because
Sure.
I'm interested in having a real conversation. But
Yeah.
I've created a webinar series, and the
Mm-hmm.
reason I've created the webinar series is because I want people to understand how I think about these things, specifically leaders to understand how I
Mm-hmm.
think about these things. Because my belief is that once they understand how I see things, they will potentially draw the same conclusions that I've drawn. So I want to lay out the case of why this is a new era. And I'm pulling up a slide really quickly because I just created it and I want to talk about it. So there's a term, I think it was coined by Reid Hoffman.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one of the founders of LinkedIn. He's done a bunch of other things. He's
Yep.
written a bunch of books, but he coined the term cognitive industrial revolution. Have you heard that term before?
I have, yes.
Yes. So I think it is a perfect description of what's going on here because it shows the scale of the change here. It's definitely generative AI is definitely the most significant technological leap that has happened since the internet. Mm-hmm. Certainly since the internet. It is potentially more powerful than the internet. I'm a bit agnostic as to whether or not it's going to be more powerful than the internet. Like that's But frankly, if it's anywhere close to it, it's significant and it's worth paying attention to, and it's going to significantly change things. My belief is that it's going to revolutionize effectively all language-based capabilities anywhere. It's going to completely change the game of what is possible. And so what I've put together in this series is helping, like trying to make the case of why I believe that is true. And then once we get to the place that like, oh, okay, I agree with you. Like this is incredibly significant. Okay, well now what can we do about it inside of our business? And you mentioned the data side of things.
Yeah.
I know we've kind of ignored that, which is a bit hilarious based off of our background in like data warehousing and data lakes. But it is true. None of this stuff, like it, no matter what, it's still garbage in, garbage out. You can't put a bunch of bogus data or a bunch of noisy data into AI and expect it to just magically work. AI is not magic. It still operates on rules.
Yep.
And the data is very, very important. And there has been a lack of corporate appetite for like doing big data projects. Like the idea that data is the new oil has been around for a while.
Yeah.
But my strong belief is that the generative AI is going to make that come true.
Mm-hmm.
And so when organizations start to see their peers or other people in different industries make incredible progress using the technology, they're going to say, oh, now organizations can do a lot of different things. The reason they haven't focused on data is because it hasn't been as important for them. Like if the data in their CRM is just a little bit off, like it's not really the end of the world. Like we're still gonna like push forward. We're doing well. It's fine, but it's going to get to the point where like no. If the data in the CRM is as good and robust as it possibly can be, it is transformative when we use generative AI on that tool. Like if you can take all the emails out of your CRM and you have good chat history inside of there, you can make just a simple example. You can make hyper customized emails for specific people inside of specific industries, and you can do it instantaneously. Like that's magic, but that only works if the data is good, because if the data is not good, then that's actually going to be really bad for you. You wouldn't want to send out a bunch of emails that are not appropriate to send out. So my expectation is that we'll see a transition over the next 3 to 5 years of people starting to take data very, very seriously because they see the potential of what it means when you take data seriously and how it can work with generative AI.
Couldn't agree more, and loved that you started this conversation thread by channeling Reid Hoffman. When I gave the first keynote address on AI about 3 years ago, I think slide 3 in my deck was "Welcome to the Cognitive Industrial
Oh,
Revolution."
nice. Yeah, great.
So well done. There's a piece too we haven't touched on here or talked much about, which is the cultural transformation that comes with implementing AI. And I know that we're still in early stages here, yet the fear is very real, and the cultural component within an organization about what this change means and what these efficiencies mean as we leverage the data that we've got and couple it with these new AI technologies is very real. Are you running into any of that yet, or is it predominantly still an optimistic based mindset that you're seeing?
I did get news like through a grapevine that there was some grumblings from engineers of like this project that I talked about earlier, that they're like, hey, like, should I be worried about my job? And and the answer is like, no. Like this is not going to, it can't actually make human decisions, right? Like you still need a human decision maker. What it does is help you be much more effective and efficient and actually free us up to be more creative, more impactful, do better work that actually is that you feel good about. Like part of the reason that a lot of people are not enjoying their jobs right now is because they spend so much time doing stuff that they hate, right?
Yeah.
And the AI can take out all the stuff that you hate. Like here's a simple example.
Sure.
At a company that I used to work at, one of the biggest challenges that we had is that the engineers did not have the time to write down all of their design practices. Like the documentation was lacking, and the documentation was lacking because there was so much going on, and there's always fires going on if you're like an engineer. And so the idea of being like, oh, I need to quarantine myself for 3 days so I can actually document all the things that I did and write it down super clearly, so the next time we have this problem, somebody can come like behind me and read and learn, and we can share that information broadly. That's a great idea. In practice, it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
The game is completely different with generative AI. You can type in a few bullet points, you can upload drawings, you can talk into a microphone and then say, develop a design practice or develop like work instructions based off of what I've said. And it will generate something that's 90% good in 5 seconds. And it completely revolutionizes what is possible on doing the documentation that's important, that can then have like this very positive feedback loop of that you can then take that information once you like actually read through it and like confirm that like, yes, this is exactly what I want to say, and you've edited it. You can then put that back into your AI machine, and then everyone has access to that. It's just a part of your corpus of your corporation. But I started this by saying that this is the reason that type of stuff doesn't happen is because engineers hate doing it. Right. So that's the type of thing that AI can automate. Like that's what it's amazing at. Just let it do that job, and then frees you up to make strategic decisions, to think about what would actually be the most impactful thing in your particular role. The reason that you wanted to go into that field in the first place.
I think that the example that you gave is fantastic because it goes to the heart of something that I think folks don't truly appreciate. And I'll just try and play this out here succinctly. Folks that have been in and around technology have heard of Moore's Law, right? Moore's Law is just kind of low-hanging fruit there. And what a lot of folks fail to appreciate is that there are corollaries and ancillary rules that are applicable to other areas of the technology field in terms of the cost and the size of hard drives, right? The amount of data that can get transmitted via photonics, the general compute power that's available in the world, right? So when we take a step back and we talk about AI and we talk about some of these other corollaries that are going on, and we use your example as a frame of reference, it is not difficult to project forward very far to a point in time where that engineer, instead of having to talk or instead of having to go through something that might be less painful than sequestering themselves for 3 days at a time, they simply have an AI co-pilot riding beside them that has taken screenshots every 2 seconds of their work for the last 2 months, and every night has analyzed that data. And all of a sudden, you've got the result that you need commensurate with the delivery of your project, right? That's the kind of stuff that is, it sounds a little fantastical, but we are not that far away from those capabilities, right?
We're really not that far away from being able to do something. Like if we had 3 months and that's like the only thing that our business focused on, we could probably build something just like that.
Exactly. So I think this whole idea of talking with folks in the organization about what's possible and preparing them for the next level of advancement with these technologies, understanding how fast this stuff is moving. I thought your example was very good, because first thing I started thinking about when you were talking was the whole issue of commenting code and how developers just hate it. And it's so difficult for one developer to pick up from where somebody else left off. And this obviates that. There's no need to comment the code anymore.
Yeah. I have nothing to add to that. That was great. That was I couldn't have said that better myself.
You reminded me of that scene from what was that, Billy Madison, where he's like, "I have nothing else." That answer was perfect.
Yes, that answer was great. I didn't even ask, but it was fantastic.
Oh my God. Good stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, in our remaining time here, what is something that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to explore? Because I want to get to things that are truly important for you, but I also know that our listeners have a limited attention span. So we want to land the plane here in the next 5 to 7 minutes. So what's something that is near and dear to your heart in this field, something I didn't ask you about that we should explore a little bit?
That's a good question. There's a bunch of different ways I could take that. I could take it into a product. I could take it into a few other things. But like what I would like to talk about is why we are doing this in the first place. Yeah. So it's a bit personal. I hope that's okay. All right. So
no, Simon Sinek said it best. Start with why, and I think the why here matters more than the how and the what sometimes. So please go.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to assume that everybody's sold on the power here of what generative AI can do. But there's a lot of people that are focusing on the individual aspects of it. I'm not necessarily as interested in the individual aspects of it. Like personal productivity, I use it myself. It is very, very helpful. I'm sure you do as well. But we are focusing on businesses and organizations, not just businesses, but organizations in general, because there are a lot of challenges in the world. Right? We have there's climate change. There's world poverty. There are incredible challenges that we are going to have to deal with over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And the only way that those types of things get solved is through people working together. And people working together, those are organizations, right? It's businesses, it's nonprofits, it's governments, it's like higher education institutions. So my belief is the only way that those big problems get solved is by people working together in those types of organizations. And so our passion comes from trying to help organizations be as effective and efficient as possible. And our belief is that generative AI is the most powerful technology to make that happen. And so we are driven in order to create tools that enable organizations to do the most good they possibly can. And so that's what we wake up focusing on every single day. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but like that's really that drives me and our organization.
It doesn't sound crazy, and if I didn't know better, I'd say that you're trying to suck up to the host here, because one of my core beliefs, which is why I got into focusing on AI over the last several years, is that businesses are powered by two things: people and technology. Everything else flows from there.
Boom. Yeah. So the why behind what we're doing is pretty simple. It's to empower organizations to drive real change in the world. That's what we want to do.
Fantastic. That seems like a mic drop moment. Okay. Cameron, Thank you for sharing your insights with us today. As we wrap up, is there one final piece of advice that you'd like to leave C-suite execs with if they're looking to leverage AI in their organizations? Any parting thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that if C-suite executives are actually interested in using generative AI in their business, they should start using it themselves. So there is nothing like we can talk about it like we've talked about it for an hour or whatever it's been, but it truly is like riding a bike. You can't explain to someone what riding a bike is like until they've ridden a bike. And so trying to just actually set aside time. I'm not kidding. Like put time on your calendar to say like, I am going to play with AI. You're going to like focus on like how to get good prompts, like focus on like how can I integrate it into my workflow. Just play with it, and the more you use it, the more you will see the capabilities that what the potential is there, and then that can help inform how you try to work it inside of your organization.
Perfectly said. All right. I'd also be remiss if I didn't ask you, for our listeners that want to learn more about your work, learn more about Hallian Technologies and what you are doing, how can they get in touch? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, two things. They can go to our website, halliantech.com. And then I would say we have an upcoming webinar series. We're doing AI for Business 101 and then AI for Business 201. The first one is November 12th at 11 a.m. And then the next one is, oh man, I should have this like at the ready, but it's in early December. It's the first Thursday in December. I think it's the 6th. So if they want to learn more, they can find us there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your insights today. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me on, Chad.
You bet. All right. And for our listeners out there, thank you all for tuning in to AI for the C-Suite, where we're committed to helping middle market leaders thrive during the exponential age. If you found value in today's discussion, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on all the socials, and visit our site, aiforthecsuite.com. Join us next time as we continue to unlock the potential of AI for your organization. And until then, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check. Take care, everybody.